Y'all know the deal. It's time for another 20 minutes of extreme amounts of mind destruction. So in case you somehow did not know, about a month ago I uploaded a theory video talking about Attack on Titan's anime potentially having its own original ending and being connected to the manga timeline. Now I said in that video that if it did well, I would do a part 2. And let's just say that it did pretty well, so naturally I'm gonna make a part 2. When I was making the part 1 initially, I had about a 40% belief that the anime original ending was actually going to happen. I've come to the realization that if this does not happen, it would make less sense than if it actually does happen based on the evidence I'm going to be sharing in this video today. The videos have been popping off lately, so if you do enjoy them, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you are new. I'm really trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. That would be absolutely crazy, but I don't want to make this intro too long because I have a lot to explain, so let's get right into it. Firstly, I want to clarify that in the previous part of this theory, I mentioned that Attack on Titan would be divided into 2 different timelines, except that's wrong. You see, it's actually divided into 3 different timelines, and the first one is actually not the manga timeline, rather it's the one that Eren wakes up to in the manga timeline, basically being the dream that he has in chapter 1 and also the dream that gets extended in chapter 138. This being a different timeline makes a lot of sense, as in the manga he wakes up from this timeline having been time looped into the manga timeline. It might sound a bit confusing, but let me elaborate a little bit. If you consider the fact that Attack on Titan is made up of multiple time loops, the story has reincarnation and time loops already within it. It's pretty obvious because that's kind of the basis of this entire theory. So because of the fact that Eren wakes up from a dream in the manga, the only logical explanation to that is that he woke up from a previous timeline, and that previous timeline would be called the See You Later timeline, or the one in which he lives his last 4 years of his life out with Mikasa and ends up dying, causing the time loop and the time reset into the manga timeline. This panel right here points back to chapter 123, where Eren asks Mikasa, "What do I mean to you? What am I to you?" And in the manga, we know that she replied with something that didn't cause Eren to do what it shows in this panel right here. In this panel right here, it shows Eren holding Mikasa's hand and running away, symbolizing that they basically run away from all the war and all the fighting and live out the rest of their lives together. This is the first timeline of Attack on Titan, and at the end of this timeline, what happens is Eren dies due to the curse of Ymir, which we see at the end of chapter 138. When he wakes up from this dream, from this previous timeline, he is now in the manga timeline and has to live out his life in a different way from the previous timeline, being the See You Later one I just talked about. And if you really think about it, what is the point of Isayama putting this into the second last chapter for no reason? What is the point of this? Because to be honest, the first time reading this around, this doesn't make any sense to the reader. It does not have any purpose in the story, except he foreshadowed this in chapter 1. So we know that all of this was planned. The dialogue in this chapter even shows things that didn't actually happen in the original story. Eren's telling Mikasa that he couldn't commit mass genocide against humanity outside the walls, and he literally tells her that he's going to live his last 4 years spending time with her, just the 2 of them. This is completely contrary to what actually happened in the manga timeline, which was Eren doing the rumbling and killing 80% of humanity. What's even crazier is that this chapter is literally called A Long Dream, meaning that the dream inside of this chapter was from the previous timeline, and what manga Eren sees in this chapter is most likely the dream that he wakes up to in the anime. This was right in front of us from chapter 1. Isayama planned this from chapter 1 and we did not see any of it. What's crazy is for the entire story of Attack on Titan, Mikasa could not bring herself to kill Eren. But in this final chapter, she kills him with almost no regrets. And I've kind of been thinking, I think I've figured out why Mikasa was able to kill Eren so easily in the final chapter, and that is because she's seen this dream. Now, Mikasa plays arguably an even more important role than Eren in this whole time loop thing, because there are many good theories about Mikasa being the one to create the time loop in the first place. I'm gonna link a video on the screen right here to a video done by Always Tryhard. I mentioned him in the last video. This guy makes some ridiculous theory videos, so check this out if you want to know the full scoop on the Mikasa theory. But basically what I think is happening here is the reason that Mikasa could bring herself to kill Eren is because when she sees this dream, she understands the idea of a time loop happening. And whether it is her or not doing the looping, she knows that she is going to see Eren again. She knows that in the next timeline that comes after this, which is the manga timeline, she's going to see Eren. And in the manga, when she kills him, she knows that she's going to see him again in the anime timeline. That might as well be the reason why she tells him, see you later, later being the next timeline. That's why in the first timeline she says see you later Eren, but in the manga she doesn't say see you later Eren. She just kills him without any signs of regret. In fact, it seems as though she's smiling as she kills Eren because she knows that she is going to see him again in the anime timeline. This is absolutely crazy, and if Mikasa is the one that is doing the looping, she is going to have to die in the anime original ending. She is going to have to die if the cycle of hatred is going to end, because if she doesn't end up dying, then the time loop is just going to happen all over again, and Eren is going to fail in the end yet again. An interesting point that I want to make here, and something that I feel as though is extremely powerful in proving my point in this theory, is Isayama adding the additional pages to the final chapter of Attack on Titan. So I don't really understand why he would have done this in the first place, as the first time he did this I was completely shocked at why he would do something like this, and this was kind of the first time I'd heard of a manga author adding additional pages to his final chapter ever, so I was kind of confused as to why he did this in the first place. But if we tie it into this theory like I've been doing with everything else, it makes complete sense. Had Isayama not added those additional pages, there would have been no reason for a time reset, as had those pages not happened, we wouldn't have known that Paradis was going to get destroyed, and that wouldn't have happened because we assumed that the cycle of hatred and war and fighting had been over. But with Isayama adding those additional pages, it now brings up the problem that even though Eren died trying to stop this cycle, the cycle still continued. Why would he add these additional pages? Why would he do something that is completely unheard of? Because he needs to give the story a reason to loop back to the anime timeline. The reason Isayama added additional pages at the end of Attack on Titan and added them so vaguely to the point where we have no clue what's going on, and to the point where there's constant theories going on every single day, the reason he did all of this was to give a reason for the time reset to happen in the anime timeline. This is going to happen. If it doesn't happen, Isayama is just absolutely going to destroy his story, because what's the point of adding these additional pages to the final chapter if you're not going to make use of them in the way that I assume he intended to? This is just incredible to think about because it all makes so much sense now. In the first timeline, the cycle of hatred didn't end because it was just Eren living out his life and dying peacefully while the world would go on with this cycle of hatred. The second timeline, we thought the cycle of hatred had ended, but it didn't because of the additional pages I've just been talking about. But in the anime, it has to end. And in the anime, the only way for it to end, as Flock mentioned, is for Eren to destroy the world. This actually might happen. Like, I'm getting very close to being a 100% believer in the AoE theory. Now I want to give a bit of a different example. I've mentioned a lot of things from the actual story and the foreshadowing in the story. Now I want to talk about some other hints outside of the story that we've kind of been getting by very credible people. The first person being the leader of the band, Shinsei Kamatei-chan, which is the band that sung the season 4 intro for Attack on Titan. This guy clearly says in the video, the lead singer of the band clearly says in the video that he has a lot of ties with Isayama. Obviously that makes sense because he sung the opening for season 4 and as well the outro for season 1 or 2, I believe. Now what he says in this video is very, very interesting and adds a lot to this theory. What he says is these exact words.
アニメが来年のいつまで放送されるってことは俺は知ってんの。あくまで俺の予想として聞いてくださいね。ファイナルシーズンその1、その2、その3、その4って。
So here's the interesting thing about this. Obviously we know that this man is credible. He knows what he's talking about and he isn't just trolling us. Well, he might be trolling us. For the most part, if we take what this man says and honestly think about it, it kinda makes sense. Now, if you've seen the leaks for the final season part 2, you know about the leaks and the discussion about the final season part 2 ending on chapter 131 and the rest being adapted as a movie. Well, if season 4 part 1 is the part 1 he's talking about, part 2 is part 2, the movie is part 3, what would be part 4? Now, I don't necessarily know what part 4 would be, but this kind of ties in to what the lead singer of this band is talking about on how Attack on Titan season 4 will be split into 4 different parts. Now, in the previous video, I talked about the memory shards and what they had to do with this whole theory. Now, if you take a look back to those memory shards, the one with Historia's eye that I addressed in the previous video but I didn't go too in-depth into, if you look at this scene, it is nowhere to be found in the manga. Now, if you go to the anime, we see this exact scene right here, where it shows Historia's pregnancy. An added scene is put in by Mappa, which is this exact memory shard. Furthermore, in this scene, if you listen to the audio, there are birds chirping in the background.
中に入ろう、ヒストリア。
Birds symbolizing Eren. Eren sees this exact scene. What the Let's take a look at the Akatsuki no Requiem music video, as I believe this presents the most hints towards this theory. At about 30 seconds, we see this man standing in front of a grave holding flowers. Now he's wearing all black and he's missing his left leg. If you take a look at the anime, Eren is missing his left leg. So would this person symbolize Eren? The answer is yes, as later in this music video, he takes his mask off and under that mask is a bird. And as we all know, Eren is the one controlling the birds in the story. As the lyrics sing, paradise slowly recedes from sight at the end of this ever-continued road, it shows Eren pointing a bow and arrow at these children. Now, these children could represent Ramsey and Halil from the 131st chapter. But as he points the arrow, these children seem to look like frogs. And if you take a look at the season 4 opening lyrics, it says, "The frogs were crying on our way home. This is my last war." Now, these are just a few lyrics that I thought sounded very interesting, and I would allow you to interpret these however you wish. But right here at the timestamp 3 minutes and 5 seconds, I kid you not, look at what this says. The world is simple to understand, but that's exactly why it's so complex. The same tragedies keep repeating time and time again. And here as it closes, it says, "Let us meet again at dawn in a world without walls," possibly hinting at the fact that these two characters shown in this music video will meet again in a world without walls. That world possibly being the anime. I know I said that would be the last thing I'm going to talk about, but to be honest, I just discovered something else. If you take a look at the ending for season 4, the first thing that happens is what seems to be a point of view of a bird, right? In the first scene of season 4, when Falco tells the bird to fly away, it flies in the direction of the danger, right? We know this also ties into the theory in the way that the bird in the manga flew away from the danger, whereas the bird in the anime flew towards the danger, symbolizing that Eren will fight this time around. As he flies towards the danger, in this outro, it seems to be that point of view. And the lyrics in this outro say, "I saw a momentary flicker of a world abandoned. That world abandoned being the additional pages of the manga. There are a ton of other different changes, minor changes that have happened in the anime, like Falco saying these words in the anime versus in the manga where he says absolutely nothing of that nature. This video was simply to point out more hints that Attack on Titan's anime could possibly have its own original ending. Do not take this for 100% confirmation. Do not think that I work for MAPPA or I work with Hajime Isayama. I'm going to end the video here. I do thank you all for watching this far. Make sure to check out my other videos on this exact topic. But with that, I am out. Peace.